Hello and welcome back, everybody, to Titans Up Today, episode 45. I have Justin Jewell Richins, the founder and CEO of SubMOA Firearms, which we'll talk about, and also R&K Hunting Company. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And a little bit of background on what all those things are. So big game hunting, taking people who want to get out there into the wild and their natural primal selves and taking them into hunting in the wide out nature. So Justin, the story we want to start here with is about the time you were in handcuffs at the Mariposa Crossing. Tell us where the Mariposa Crossing is, for many of us who don't know.
The Mariposa Crossing, I'm sure you guys have heard of Nogales, Arizona, and Mexico. It's in Nogales, Arizona, actually. The Nogales Crossing, which you can cross through downtown, and then you just run into all kinds of vendors. Where the Mariposa Crossing is, the truckers route, so there's a lot less traffic. Most of your heavy-duty, your RVs and your truckers use that route. And I'll use that as well. For me, it's easier. I just don't like going downtown Nogales. It's okay on the U.S. side. Once you hit the Arizona side, it's just panhandlers for miles. And usually by the time you get out of it, you've been extorted for about anywhere from $50 to $100 from the local PD. So it's best just to go around it.
And then this story, how did you end up in handcuffs?
Handcuffs and shackles, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's one of the better hunting stories. I don't speak Spanish, and I've been down to Mexico going on 20 years now. I always cheat, have an interpreter with me. And I met this younger kid. His name was Kobe. He just got back off of a church mission here in Utah. Church missions are a big deal. But I wanted to take him to Mexico to learn to start guiding for me there. He had a good hunting background, but he also spoke Spanish, so I thought it could be a good fit. So here we are. We're outside of Hermosillo, probably 1 hour west towards the coast. No cell phone service whatsoever. The lead up to this story, and I'll be careful not to use his name, even though to this day, I owe that son of a bitch. But we had a client, and Chris, who works at my office, she handles all my bookings. She'd call me throughout there, and she'd, man, I don't know about this guy. He seems really high maintenance. And it's a rule of thumb. If I get people who are somewhat nervous or high maintenance, I don't take them to Mexico because there's just too many things running through their head. And I don't want to deal with that. I'm there to focus on taking them out on a hunting trip, targeting big game, harvesting big game, and coming back in. So he was coming with his father and some other people, and they weren't able to make the trip. So he keeps hounding me. And she's like, man, do you want to just cancel this guy's trip? And it's late in the game. And it's hard to get hunters to go to Mexico to begin with because they're nervous until they've been there. Then once they've been there, they're like, oh yeah, no sweat. Anyways, this guy was really nervous to come, and he would have a different experience on the phone with Chris than me. So I called him up, and he seems just fine. He says, I don't know, maybe you should cancel him. And it's too close to the hunt. I'm like, I'm not going to cancel the dude. Like, I can't lose that money last minute. If he wants to find a replacement hunter, fine. And I'm like, he seems normal on the phone. I can handle him. So long story short, we always provide a picture of the driver that's going to pick them up, at least on their first trip until they get used to it. Because people be like, oh man, they get down to Mexico and nobody speaks English. And so they're all sketched out. So we provide him with a photo of the person who's going to be picking them up, give him their name. We share WhatsApp. This guy's, our driver happened to be Juan Carlos at that time, and he speaks English as well. Perfect guy to pick him up. Long story short, he wasn't able to make his original flight. There's two flights that kind of come in and out of there. You have one at about 1 o'clock, and then you have one at about 6 o'clock. And 6 o'clock one might not even be there anymore. I think that got scrapped after COVID. But he missed his flight, wasn't able to make that flight, so he's coming in later. So we let him know that, hey, later on we're going to have a different driver available for you. We have to head back to camp. I'm going to be at camp. There's no cell phone service. We're going to leave a guy here. And there happened to be another hunter on that same flight who also had some issues and missed that flight. So these guys meet up. The one hunter was super cool. The other hunter, who ended up being a pain in the butt, I remember his name like nothing, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I don't want to completely ruin the dude, but it's changed my view on chiropractics who are life coaches. That's a quack. He gets there, right? They arrive, they go through their checkpoint, they go out of security. If you're bringing a firearm, it takes a little bit longer, and you have to wait for your permits to be approved by the military. Then you come through. We're meeting on the other side. So here we are on the other side. I'm not there. I'm somewhere where there's no cell phone service. He's with another hunter, and we have a driver come up and meet him, shows him his photo. He has a copy of both hunters' passports, but it wasn't the same driver that we told him we'd originally send because that driver was already gone. So right there, he's like, Whoa. Dude, I swear has watched every narco movie possible before he came down there. He was afraid to get in the vehicle. And this is not who I was told was going to pick me up. So he's got a copy of his passport, the other guy's passport, and the other hunter's looking at him like, dude, clearly they know who we are. It's 1 o'clock in the morning now. We don't want to wake Chris up, but he wouldn't get in. She calls Chris, wakes Chris up at 1:30, and Chris didn't know the name of this driver either. So she calls, and now this guy's really freaking out like, oh, I don't know who this is. And Chris is, you got me freaked out now too. So let me call the owner's daughter. My daughter, Camberlyn, actually guides down there with me, and she happens to know all our staff. So she jumps on the phone. She's, oh yeah, sure. This is one of our drivers. Just time to get in the damn vehicle and go. So and we're there in a company truck as well. MX stickers all over the side of it, but he's afraid to go. So long story short, he gets in. He comes to camp, gets in late, and Chris had also told me, she's like, just do whatever you can to get this guy taken care of and go home. Early the next morning, myself and the other guide that's with me, we also have Mexican spotters, we go out, and we had a buck pegged for him and picked out. It really wouldn't be that hard of a hunt. We had a deer that was coming religiously every couple days to one of our feeders we put out. Sure enough, he happened to be on the feeder. We go out there and whack this guy a 200-inch buck. And for those of you who don't know, that's like the holy grail of mule deer hunting is shooting a 200-inch buck. The guys, I mean, wow, that was awesome. That was the greatest hunt of my life. This is the best guided hunt ever. And I'm like, how many guided hunts have you been on? He's like, this is my first guided hunt. Okay, cool. I'm like, you have 7 days left or 6 days left because they're 6-day hunting trips. So we're morning one's over. There's 5.5 days to be exact. And I'm like, would you like to go hunt coos deer? I'll send you with my best guides, Poncho and Poncho. Yeah, sure. I'll do that. So come back to camp. We line it up for him to go with Poncho and Poncho, completely different direction because we have to go where we have Yumas, they're called. It's a way to have a guaranteed tag and to make sure that the animal is taken on that particular piece of property. It's just Mexican laws that you have to follow. However, I think we're the only ones that follow it. Nobody else does. But he goes out hunting that day, and it was a good night. Some other guys had harvested some nice bucks. They come in. Guys are drinking, having a good time. And this dude, he's gone the next morning. So I'm like, I haven't checked in with the office. I need to drive back in. So I need to drive an hour to get phone service. So I drive into towards Hermosillo, and all of a sudden my phone starts going off. Ding, ding. And I call Christina, and she's, what's wrong with Matt? What's going on with Matt? And I'm like, what do you mean what's going on with Matt? She's calling me. He's freaking me out. I don't know what's going on. I call this Matt guy, and he hangs up on me. Oh, shoot. I shouldn't have said his name. I'm not going to say his last name, okay?
There's a lot of...
I'm going to go back to Matt. Call this guy, and he just keeps ignoring my phone call. And so I call the guide, and I'm like, hey, I'm thinking maybe he's dehydrated or something, because coos deer hunting, you have to go hiking quite a bit. And I called Poncho, and Poncho speaks freaking English. And I'm like, hey, Poncho, what's going on? Fucking gringo loco, man. Gringo. That's all he would say. And I'm like, put him on the phone. Matt gets on the phone. I'm like, hey, Matt, what's going on? He's, oh, man, we're up here on this mountain and we're hunting, and you can see the freeway. And there's a car parked down on the freeway. Why is that car parked on the freeway? And to back this up a little bit, because people have been nervous to go to Mexico, we send them with Global Rescue, or the option to get Global Rescue. He's the only guy that's ever purchased Global Rescue. So he's got this, I believe it was a little necklace hanging around his neck, and you could pull the ripcord, and that would notify Global Rescue. Anyways, I call him, and we're on the phone. I'm like, do you have water? Yeah, I got water. I don't know, man. Maybe I just drunk a little bit too much last night. And I'm like, okay, cool. Where are you at? I'm going to come get you. I'm personally going to come and pick you up. He's like, why are you going to come personally pick me up? And I'm like, because you sound like you're nervous. I'm going to come pick you up. I'm going to bring Kobe with me. I don't drive the country. Kobe's my interpreter. If you've met Kobe. So I find out where he's at, and he's just past the check station. And I have a firearm with me that I don't have the permit in my name. I'm not able to go actually pick him up. I can only go as far as the check station. I go past the check station, then I have to go through this military checkpoint, and I'll have a firearm with the wrong permits. I can't go pick him up. I'm like, I'll wait right here at the ranch gate for you. And I'm like, are you hungry? He's like, yeah, that's probably it. I didn't get anything to eat. And I'm like, put Poncho on the phone. I'm like, Poncho, give this guy some meat. He's like, fucking gringo loco, man. My wife brought dinner. So his wife brought food up to the ranch, but he got hyper-focused on a car that stopped down on the freeway because, as you'll find out a little bit later on, I think the dude watched every narco movie possible, every cartel movie. So we get back there, we pick him up, we ask him what's going on. I just think I drunk too much last night. I want to go home. I wasn't paying attention to whether he's drinking or not. So we take him back to camp. There's no phone service. The other guy shot some nice bucks, comes back in, and he starts pacing. He's like pacing back and forth. I'm like, Matt, are you okay? He looks at me like this and he goes, and he'd start pacing again, and he'd walk back and forth and he'd pace, and I'm looking over at him. He looks at me and he goes, so I go up to him. I'm like, Matt, what's the matter? What's going on? You got kids, right? I'm like, yeah, I have 7 kids, actually.
Wow.
There you go. I'm like, why? I'm going to go home to my kids. And he starts crying. Man. And this is in front of the whole camp. And I'm like, Matt, what's the matter? Everybody's going home with their family. You're out here to go on a hunting trip. Why are you freaking out? At this point, I'm like, I'm getting this dude out of here. I'm going to drive him back into Hermosillo, which when you're driving to Hermosillo that time or try to fly out, there's usually not many available flights. So I'm sitting here thinking, shit, I'm going to have to drive this guy all the way into Tucson. It's like a 10-hour, 12-hour round trip. So we start preparing for that. And I'm like, Matt, are you okay? Are you freaking out? And the dude's just like really starting to freak out. He's, has anybody ever got killed out here? I'm like, no one's ever gotten killed. I feel safer here than I do in West Valley City, which is a dangerous city here in Utah. I'm like, there's no issues. I'm like, why are you freaking out? He's like, I just think I dressed too much, but this is the best guided trip I've ever been on. Goes completely from, it's like riding a roller coaster. Now he's smiling again. Then he starts hyperventilating a little bit, and I'm like, oh man, we got someone on our hand who's having a little bit of a nervous breakdown. Well, I turn to him, I'm like, do you want me to come and sleep in your room right next to you on the floor? He's like, well, why do you want to sleep right next to me on the floor? And I'm like, dude, you're freaking everybody out. So I make sure everybody removes the firearms out of the little ranch house that we're staying at. And I'm staying in a little teeny tiny chapel. When I say little chapel, for those of you who haven't been to Mexico, it's a highly Christian country. They build these little teeny, like 10 by 10 or 4 by 4, 6 by 6 chapels with some murals of Jesus and Mary, etc. And they go in there and light candles. So I'm sleeping in one of there on my sleeping bag. That's the only place for me to sleep in a cot. He goes to sleep. God, the story gets a little weird, but it is what it is. So he goes to sleep. 5 o'clock in the morning, chapel door gets swung open just like that. And one of my guides, Eric, kicks open the door and he's, you need to get, and excuse my language, but I'm going to be frank here. You need to get the fuck in here. Matt's freaking the fuck out, and I got to go guide here in an hour. So I go in there, and Matt's, hey, I heard the cooks talking. Why are they saying Matt likes little boys? This story just starts going all over the place. And I'm like, and Eric's like, turns to me and he's, Matt, you need to shut the fuck up. You don't even speak Spanish. I speak Spanish. That's not even what they're saying. I don't know what he's hearing. So he's starting to hear things. So I said to him, Matt, I'm going to sit right here. We're going to wait till morning comes. As soon as morning comes, everybody's going to leave. Me and you or Kobe are going to take you into Hermosillo. Here's how it's going to play out. We'll go there. We'll see if there's a flight. There's not going to be a flight. So if you would like, we'll drive you all the way to Tucson, which is a 6-hour drive one way. We'll put you there. You'll get a flight out of there. You can go home. So yeah, okay, I think that'll be good. And then he calms down. I'm sorry. This has been the best guided hunt I've ever been on. Not even 5 minutes later, he's like pacing, looking back at me like, I want to go home. I just want to go home and see my family. And I'm like, dude, nobody wants you to go home to see your family worse than I do. So just sit your ass down and we're going to get you into town. And everybody else, they had finally left and they're looking at me like, oh, good luck with this one. He puts all of his stuff in the truck and he actually started to get a little freaked out, wanting to know why I'm going to stay back at camp, why me and Colby are going to stay back at camp just to take care of him. I'm like, we've already been over this. I don't drive the roads in the dark. I don't speak Spanish. Kobe goes everywhere with me. He loads all of his stuff into the truck. I have Kobe go through his backpack. He was renting one of our firearms. He didn't bring a firearm, so he didn't have to go through the permitting process. And he stuck a bunch of our ammo in his suitcase, which we have a checkpoint we'll have to go through. So if we're caught with ammunition and no permit, or a firearm and no permit, we're going to all end up in the clink down in Mexico. So we took all his damn ammunition out, took his knives out, threw them away. And he hauls his backpack in and out again, and we thought we'd checked it all. Granted, he'd stuck some more ammunition in that backpack. Boom, we start heading into Tucson, or headed towards Hermosillo. We get like 30 minutes down the road. I'm like, are you okay if I turn on some David Goggins? I don't know if you know who David Goggins is.
Yeah, of course.
Total badass, man. And we're listening to him. And he's talking about he's doing this 100-mile run barefoot and his feet are bleeding. And Matt turns over to me and he goes, what the? He's sitting up in the front and I'm driving. Kobe's in the back. Kobe's just a little guy. And I'm like, geez, man, it's David Goggins. Have you not heard of David Goggins? I'm like, here, I'll turn it off. I'll put some elevator music on. What do you want? No, I'm just fine. Just drive the truck. We start driving the truck. We get to where we got phone service. Sure enough, there's no phone service, or there's no flights coming out of Hermosillo. So now we're going to have to drive to Tucson. I'll just pay you to drive to Tucson. I'm like, I'm already planning on driving you to Tucson because nobody wants you out of here worse than I do. We're driving to Tucson now, and he's on his phone texting all the time. And then all of a sudden, my phone rings from Chris. She's, what's going on with Matt? And I'm like, why? His wife just called me and said, you guys have kidnapped him.
Jesus.
So this dude tells his wife that we've abducted him. So here we are driving to the border. We didn't know that he'd told his wife that we'd abducted him. He just thought he'd been kidnapped. We trying to sort everything that's going on. Finally, I realized that he thinks he's been kidnapped. So I'm like, put his wife on the phone. And his wife and him were actually going through a divorce at this time. At least that's what he told me when he first came out. So maybe that compounded the stress. I'm like, dude, you're going to be fucked now because I'm going to unload some shit on your wife when I talk to your wife. So his wife calls me, or I get her on the phone. She's, what's going on? I'm like, we don't know what's going on with Matt. Does he have any problems? He's having a complete mental breakdown. He thinks he's abducted him. Here's what happened. We're driving him to the border, and he's just getting more hyped up and more hyped up. And so I can't calm this guy down. We pull over. I get in the back of the truck now because I'm thinking, what if I have to restrain this dude, right? And I learned a lot about mental illness. Long story short is if this happens, just call the ambulance and send him away. But we're in Mexico and people don't feel comfortable about that. And I didn't either because I'm responsible for this dude's safety. So I'm like, I got to get this dude to the border no matter what. And so we're driving. I call my partner who runs the University of Utah Hospital and I tell him what's going on. He's trying to calm the guy down. He's like, hey, trust me, this guy's not an abductor. He's my partner, yada, yada, yada. I call my daughter because this guy has kids too. I'm like, hey, Keish, this is what's happened. Hey, I promise my dad's not trying to abduct you. He has kids. He just wants to come home. He's a good guy. And we're driving. And this dude, Matt's just freaking out. At some point, he pulled his global rescue ripcord. And that must be the thing to do because he'd already emailed everybody in his staff that he's been abducted. So they called at least what I was told, that they called their congressman. They're calling the FBI. They're calling everybody. Here we are, just slowly working our way to unaware of everything that's going on
at this point.
Oh, that's how we end up in handcuffs and shackles. So we're going along. We're trying everything that we can do to calm the guy down, but nothing's working. Kobe's driving at this point. His wife calls back, and he's like talking on the phone like this slowly. This wasn't his wife. This must have been Global Rescue. Red pickup truck, Dodge, 2 occupants. Like he's giving him our description. Oh, here we are kidnapping him, driving him back. And at this point, we know something's going to go down when we get to the border, right? But we're just trying to get him back there. I call his wife back. I'm like, hey, you need to tell me if this guy's got some mental problems. I don't know what's going on, but clearly he has some mental issues. And I can't get a hold of camp because there's no cell phone service, but they did find some prescription drugs. We're asking Matt if he's had any sort of mental issues, and they're all telling us no, but they're being coy about it. And so then Kobe asks, hey, do you have any kids? What are your kids' names? Like, why do you want to know if I have kids? He calls up his wife, Jessica, they're asking about our kids. Hangs up the phone on her. At this point, I turn my phone on record, right? Because I'm like, I got to record this shit. So I've got my phone on record because I don't know how it's going to play out. I send Kobe a message as he's driving. I'm like, turn your phone on record. So he's doing the same thing. We're driving down the road. We're getting closer to Mariposa. And I got a phone call that I'm taking, and I'm talking about a hunt that we're having in Wyoming. And I'm telling him that in this unit that you can hunt on both sides of the road. And he's listening to this. And here we're driving, and there's both sides of the road. And then I'm telling him about the spreads of the game animals we can hunt. They're 36 to, or excuse me, I wish they were that large. They're like 26 to 22 inches wide. And then I got another phone call because I'd ordered an EDM machine, which is a machine that does electromagnetic discharge for machining for my receivers on my firearms. And they needed to change the input voltage with a buck and boost transformer because the input voltage has to be correct. So they're telling me they need to buck it up to 248 and then down to exactly a 208. And this is all on speakerphone. And then Kobe takes a picture of the road because he's Snapchatting people. He's one of those younger kids that uses that Snapchat crap. And as soon as he takes the Snapchat and hangs it up, this guy goes ballistic. He turns back to me, Justin, what in the fuck kind of human hunts are you running down here? What do you mean you can hunt them on both sides of the road? What do you mean it's 208 volts? What are you going to do? Oh, my. And Kobe's this Perfect little Mormon boy, never says a word, swear word in his life. He's, dude, you need to calm the fuck down. So we're driving. We get to the crossing. We see, usually there's not armed guards from the U.S. side walking up and down, checking out the vehicles. We see that they're looking for us. I just roll down all the windows at this point. We got our kind of hands going like this because we know something's going on. We roll up. We hand them their passports. As soon as we hand them their passports, boom, 10 guys surround us.
Oh, man.
Pull us all out of the vehicles, stick us in handcuffs, shackless. They did the same thing to Matt. And Matt was like completely beside himself because he thought they're going to pull him out. We rescued you. They haul us into, they have a little holding center there, and it's just stainless steel everywhere. And so I'm nervous now. I'm like going, holy crap, this dude's going to tell people we abducted him. Do I say, hey, I need my attorney? And I'm like, there's no way. I've got it recorded and everything. So they strip us down. So I'm just in my underwear. Kobe's in his underwear in separate holding cells, handcuffs, shackles. Eventually they take the handcuffs and shackles off us. So I'm just pacing in there going, man, what's going on? I'm a gluten-free guy. So they eventually give us some water and some snacks. And so now I'm starting to get nervous, right? I shit through a whole roll of toilet paper. I'm like, you need some, I shit through that next roll of toilet paper. 1 hour goes by, 2 hours goes by, 3 hours goes by, 4 hours goes by. And our families at this point are aware of what's going on. So everybody's texting us. They see we're stuck at the Mariposa crossing. 5 hours go by, 6 hours go by. They eventually pull us out. So they pull us out of the little holding center, and you got to come back and answer some questions individually. So what they told us they had to do, they had to fly in someone from Department of Homeland Security because there was an abduction, bring the head of the port in. They finally realized that the dude was crazy, and they basically just told us, it's a good thing you had that recorded. I'm like, what? So if I hadn't had it recorded, this would have been an international incident, and we'd have been there, for who knows how much longer. Here's what happened. We also thought he was crazy because we called his wife up, and his wife wouldn't talk to us because he told his wife that we, which was the Port Authority and Homeland Security, whoever was there or they flown in or whatever, that they were working for the cartel. Wow. So he refused to talk to her. And this guy only was sharing his location with one person. They're like, here's what you guys need to do. They thought it was funny at this point. They're laughing their butts off. And I'd never been so happy to get back in Mexico to my entire life. They're like, need to drive up to the gas station, turn around. We gave him a 15-minute head start. So we get out there. I see left all of his luggage in my truck. So his luggage is in the back. And they stripped our truck. So they pulled the dash off. They pulled the door panels off. And they never even put it back together. So there we are trying to put our Dodge back together. And I drive into the little convenience store there, and I'm like, hey, can you hold this luggage for $20? I call his wife. I'm like, you can have the police come by, pick it up or whatever. So at this point, I'm like, fuck this guy. I call the airport. I'm like, hey, this is what just happened. This dude's coming to get on a plane. He's going to try to fly home. You're going to get that bird if you're lucky, maybe a mile into the air, and this guy's going to have an incident. He's going to turn around. Meanwhile, this guy just disappears in the middle of the desert in Nogales. Turns off his location. His family's freaking out. I don't even care at this point. You know what I mean? He's no longer my responsibility. We turn around, get back into Mexico. About 30 minutes later, my phone rings because eventually, I guess, the police picked him up. He ended up going to a psychiatric facility, for several days before he had to go home. But this is no shit. Within about 30 minutes of them picking him up, his phone's ringing. I'm like, why would I even answer the phone for this dude? Hey, Justin, this is Matt. I'm real sorry. If there's anything, I apologize. The best hunt I've ever been on. I was like, screw that guy. Kind of like a week later, he called us back, left a big old apology, said that he had this happen before. And if we could ever find the forgiveness, he'd love to come back and hunt with us again.
Wow.
That's that. So, top that one. So, yeah, there we go. And the next day when we had to go through to drop another hunter off the airport, man, I was so nervous going through there. I'm like, am I red flagged? What's going on? And we went down, we crossed. So I didn't want to cross the Mariposa. I crossed downtown Nogales. And when we go through, the guy's like, hey, you look familiar. I was like, no. Vominos. But yeah, from a hunting standpoint, that was something else.
Quite the intense
that was one for the
story.
books. Yeah, that's
labeled
some
an
shackles.
abductor and getting,
yeah.
luckily scotch-free at this point. And one of the things we talked about too is that you've had many hunts go very well. just for everybody who's listening who would eventually want to go on a hunt, because I think it's definitely a very powerful and positive experience. I'm definitely going to go at some point. But how many hunts have you done positively, successfully, where people have had these great experiences and things of that nature?
It would be hard for me to add up, but over the years, several thousand. We've done thousands of successful hunts. We've never had an incident like that. And in Mexico, I'm talking about U.S. and Mexico. Yeah, it was probably 1,500 hunts over the years. So we've done a lot of hunting trips down there. Never had any issues. We have some issues in the States where high altitude will get to people and they'll get altitude sickness. So we'll have to bring them off the mountain. But other than that, not really. People afraid of the dark, or afraid that there's going to be bears or mountain lions around the corner. But now that's one for the books. Dude watched it. Yeah, the guy must have watched every narco movie possible, and so he was just afraid to go. So now we changed our policy. If we get anything that we feel like is even the slightest red flag, sorry, we're not taking you. They're just not coming. You got to have your shit together. You got to be emotionally stable to come down there. And it does freak people out who have never been there before, just when you have to learn how you navigate the country, because they're not used to it. But I feel safer there, like I said earlier. You're not catching me going to Chicago. You're not catching me going to certain parts of LA. You're not catching me going to West Valley City. But I've never had an incident that I would say is scary in Mexico dealing with the people in the state of Sonora. They're actually very kind and generous people who really want the work. So,
and even dealing with the cartel, which we're going to talk about, where necessary, having to have the conversations or build the relationships. So that's one of the parts we're going to get deeper here on this episode, is just the way that the United States citizens and just our general media talks about different countries. Obviously, we're going to focus today on Mexico, the cartel, and really it's more of a way of life out there than we even can really understand here in the United States.
For sure. It's interesting because you hear the culture, even from the work culture, but it's just a completely different culture. They run on their own time. We call it Mexican time down there. 30 minutes is never 30 minutes. It's 40 minutes at best. It's usually 30 minutes is an hour. It's extremely different. So Mexico, the best way to think about it is it's the biggest small town in the world. That's the only way I can equate it. They know everything that goes on. If there's a little incident across the border, or I go into an area where I shouldn't and I'm logoed up in my truck, they'll know it all across the state. They just do. And it'll eventually, it doesn't take too long to filter back to us. And you do have to follow your rules. Our experience with the cartel is nothing like you on the radio here. To us, they're friendly. They're kind. They actually, because I'm from the U.S. and stuff like that, they think I'm cool. And honestly, in some way, it feels cool or just a little bit dangerous to be hanging out with those guys or meeting someone. And you never meet the high level guys, but you can meet some guys that are in charge of that territory, and they're fairly high up, but you don't meet anybody like that they've just extradited. You do end up hunting their ranches because they do control large swaths of property. So you do have to have those relationships and those permissions to be able to hunt there. In some areas, even though it's owned by another owner, you still have to have permission from whichever cartel is in control of that to be able to be on there. And that's just more about notifications so that they know that you're going to be in an area, because they're very protective of it, and they just don't like the unknowns. A lot of times when you cross from that border, every high hill along the freeway has a guy with a radio. That's just how they work, because they have to keep an eye on everything. And we're not in their business. We're not in that business. We're in the hunting business. And so they're actually really respectful. It might sound contradictory to what you hear. You do sometimes in certain areas, which we don't go there with hunters, you will see some banditos or whatever you want to call it that are really young, very young, AKs, full body armor in the back of what we call almost like a cattle truck. But that's what they do. Our hunters never see that, and we don't hunt those areas. But outside of the season, when we scout new areas, we will occasionally come across that. But it's really safe. They don't want to mess with anyways because it creates too much heat. The only people that really kind of mess with gringos, honestly, are the police. They want to get $40-$50 out of you. That's really their side gig.
The main take of that story for everybody, why we wanted to start with that, is the operating in high stakes circumstances. And hopefully Matt is better now. Obviously, things happen.
He's not coming back with me.
Yes. Hopefully he's better. We want to start with that story just because in business, every day, we think we operate in high stakes. You have an intense meeting or a big pitch or something like that. You have to deal with something with a customer. But really, if we put what is the true stake in that situation, it's you lose a customer, you gain an investor, the person says no, the person says yes. Your life isn't at risk. And you're not really dealing with, like you said, Justin, the primal self that really is that comes out when you're put into a foreign and uncertain environment that has there's more dastardly risks. And you mentioned the term actually there, the cartel, when it comes to people that are coming into their territory, don't take those risks. And when you were explaining and going through that story, I could see all the check throughs in your mind about as you're going through this point, this thing has to be like that, or this circumstance has to be this way, or things of that nature, that you develop the processes to be able to deal with those high stakes scenarios. And I think that's one of the main takeaways and kind of things we want to learn more
Sure.
about how you developed that understanding and how people can apply that to their life and business as well.
I have a very connected partner down there. I can't go into too much detail without his permission about his background, but he lost a father to Chapo. He lost a brother to Chapo. His family was that, but he was never that. He actually was sent to Canada, U.S., got educated, dual citizen. I'm a dual citizen as well now. It's residency, actually. So I'm a Mexican resident and a citizen of the U.S. But he's seen all of that, and he always told me it ends up one of two ways. You end up dead or in jail. They don't have any other future. It's just a matter of time. And you can make money now, or you can work hard and make money over the long haul. But he's been, my partner down there has been an absolute blessing. I had another partner beforehand, which I knew was always going to end, and I could never figure out how he got into all these dumbass situations and got out of them. And then I realized later on the person who I am partnered up with now was the guy who was always getting him out of a good portion of these dumb situations that he would get himself in. But it's really, there are rules that you have to follow down there. You can't go down there like a lot of companies do. And there are a lot of American companies who it's a matter of time who will get themselves in a position that it's going to feel dangerous and it's going to be extremely uncomfortable for them and their hunters, and they'll probably never come back to Mexico after that because they don't check all these boxes. There's just a bunch of boxes you need to check. There's certain areas. If you draw an hour and a half circle around Hermosillo, pretty much go anywhere there, no problem at all. You start to widen that circle and you get closer to the border, you end up in that Caborca to Sonoita area. You absolutely have to have all those connections in place, or you're going to end up in some scenarios that are not going to be fun at all. They're going to be extremely uncomfortable. This will be our last year in that area because there's too many things that are happening on the fly that are even out of our control, even though we're doing all the notices. Because before we go into some of our ranches, because some of these ranches that have really giant deer, they don't get hunted a lot because people don't have the network to go in there, or there would have been a war in that area, like some of the areas that we'll be hunting next season. They've been fighting for control over it. And so when they fight for control, we're just out of the area in general. We just bounce somewhere else. But when there isn't that issue, it's really good to go into some of that unspoiled country because you don't really feel like you're in the Old West till you've been to Mexico. Once you've been into Mexico, that really is the West. You feel real freedoms. You can also feel real peace. That desert is stone cold quiet out there. Sunsets are the best in the world. That whole Sea of Cortez and that San Carlos area is known for some of the best sunsets in the world. And that Mexican country is gorgeous. And those people in all those small towns, I know we hear about all this, we need to protect our border, and I'm 100% for that. But really don't judge those people so harshly. They are the best of the best, kindest, coolest people you're going to meet anywhere. It's just the culture is a little bit different, and they have to live with this stuff full time. Some of the benefits, let's finish on some of the logistics. There are areas where, yeah, we do pay the police in the area, and it just has to happen. They don't make much money, so this is unfortunately the side gig, and it's not like they just do it to us. It's the same deal with all the residents. The number one thing you'll hear is fucking policia. And that's because of how heavily the residents are having to pay these little fines. $30 of them is a big deal. To us, not so much. I don't like to do it whenever possible because I feel like it continues to set that tone. There's a notification process. A lot of that will happen through the local cops who then notify, we call them the funny guys, the other people in the area so that they can tell us, hey, yeah, no issues today, or you should probably not go to that ranch today. And it's not as prevalent as it used to, but when we were down there a lot of times, you'd see little puddle jumpers coming in, landing on landing strips, loading up and away. You don't really see that at all. And in fact, you don't see that at all anymore. I don't know where it went, but it's just not there. But you do have to have the network. It is nice to have a relationship with the National Guard because as you travel the main highways, you're going to have what's called their National Guard, which is like our UHP with a little bit more authority. So you have the National Guard. You have the military, and that's a little bit unnerving for people. They're not used to seeing a cattle truck, is what I relate it to, because I grew up in that farming community and the cattle community with guys with M16s in the back of the pickup running the highway. So that's a little bit unnerving, but the military is different. They're not really that corruptible, so it's safe when they're there, but anytime you run into them, it's okay. New damn roadblock. Oh, I got another funny story too, dude. So you just have to have the network between the police, the National Guard, the military, the cartels, which is the most important by far, because a lot of times they'll have all those other connections downstream. And there's certain areas that you have to be really careful. You don't hang out with them. You don't take photos with them, because if that gets out there, their rivalries will think you're part of them, and then it can put you or your hunters in a situation. So we know how to navigate it. It's all about navigating. It's the sea.
Mm-hmm.
You just navigate the waters. And if you're going on a cruise ship and you're out in the Arctic, they already have radar ahead that's avoiding all the icebergs. That's the same thing we're doing. So nobody ever sees it. You're never in danger, and you don't feel it. And if there isn't something, we call it like levels 1 to 10. And our risk tolerance for anybody down there, we don't go and hire any 2. So, which a 2 is, I feel like a lot of the stuff here in the States that I go around is I'm up to a 4 or 5, but I can control a lot of things. A lot of things down there can get out of control. If it's more than level 2, and then we're just like, we'll just go over here. We have plenty of property, so we just avoid it and re-navigate it and change it. But yeah, you want to hear another funny one?
I would love it.
Real quick one. So I was coming out of this area from Sonoyta, and there's Sonoyta, Lukeville, that's a crossing. A lot of people will go to Rocky Point outside of Phoenix and Tucson. A lot of gringos will head that way. We are gringos. And there was a random checkpoint. The random checkpoints are the ones that I don't like, which it's another branch of their government, but they actually have laptops, so they can run your background. They can see if you have warrants. They can do actual arrests based on your criminal activity. And if you're out by yourself, they'll look for anything in my paperwork that's even off the slightest. So my paperwork's always just right on. Or it'll cost me $50, $100, $200. But this year I had this little vial. I had this little tracking dog that I bought out of New York a long time ago at this place called Born to Track Us. These dogs are called Teckles, and he passed away. I had him cremated, and I had his ashes in a little bullet that I wore around my neck. I had it tucked in my shirt, and I come to one of these random checkpoints. Sometimes it only takes a Coke to get by. This dude wanted some money, and I'm not giving him any money. I was like, no, I ain't giving you any, but pull you out on the side of the road, and they'll literally dig through your pockets and pull out all the cash out of your pockets, which for me is really nothing. I don't really carry cash at all anymore down there, other than maybe 2,000 pesos max. But he's giving me the pat down, and he's that bullet around my neck, and I'm by myself this time. I should have just taken an interpreter with me, and I don't have any phone service. This was before we had Starlink mobiles. Now everywhere we're running Starlink mobiles too, so we're always in constant communication. And he pulls it out, and he starts undoing it. I'm like, oh, fuck. And he dumps it out, and it's this white powder, and he puts it on his hand, and I'm like freaking out. So I'm trying to explain to him what it is. I'm like, dead dog. I'm trying to explain it's my dog. Dude dumps out my dog's ashes, goes like that, and ate my freaking dog's ashes. Then he realized I wasn't Coke, put it back up, and I gave him a couple Cokes in the back, and away we went. But yeah, they ate poor little Remy's ashes. That was a pretty funny one, though.
What face did he make when he
really didn't? He just kind of didn't know what it was, and I'm like, I didn't have phone service, so I can't use Google Translate or anything either to pull it up. So all I know how to really say is left, right, stop, go. Where's the bathroom, and a few other words, but that's it. There you go.
My dead dog. So you mentioned a few pieces there in terms of that I think can be principles for people if you're going to go into an uncertain environment, whether that actually be in the physical world or it be in business, or you're going to go into a new industry that you haven't been in before. The right people, the right person, the right guide is key, because that person has experience. They've navigated the system. They've gone through some of the peculiarities within that industry or environment, and they have the network, which is, of course, and if you're going in a physical real world scenario, you want to know people who are there so that they can provide help, guidance, or really just support you along your path into that uncertain environment.
Absolutely. The network, there's just 2 crucial components. You got to have the customers, which that's what I acquire on this end. I have the customer network, and I'd been in Mexico for quite a while before, so I knew different landowners, but I had no idea what it really took to navigate that country in a way that we could make sure everything we do or is out of sight, out of mind. I never actually want one of my customers to see a Bandito in the back of a pickup truck, Cartel, whatever, in full body armor, because that's just, they're going to feel like they're in the middle of a Netflix series, even though a lot of those small towns closer to the border, that's just everyday life for them. But it does make people nervous, and it made me nervous for probably 15 years going down there before I got used to it. And now it's not a big deal. They're not after me. I don't do anything. We keep good relationships. And the other thing is not stirring the bee's nest. It's keeping your relationships with multiple people on good terms down there. It is good. You don't want to be a complete softy. You're going to be taken advantage of, but you still have to be respectful. Definitely have to be respectful in that community, and not play both sides, but never pick friends on one side. You know what I mean? It's a friend for all type of deal. But something else that I've noticed has been really helpful. A good portion of our staff down there in the off season, they would use their equipment, their binoculars, etc. They'll go work for the cartels, smuggling drugs. That's what they did. They'd make $1,500, take them a month and a half to get to Tucson and back doing their runs. But we would use them because they have such incredible eyesight. You think we're good, and we grew up in the hunting. When you get down into that environment, sometimes it's 10 to 1. They don't know how to kill. We know how to kill. They don't know how to set up a hunter on a kill. They don't really know how to get him in position, because they really know little to nothing about firearms. Most of the people down there don't know anything about firearms because they're not allowed to own them unless they belong to a gun club and they pay a yearly permit fee. They can have up to 10 firearms. But because of that cost, it's just too encumbersome for them, so they don't use it. But they all have worked in that trade at some point, because that's the only trade that there really is. And a lot of them are educated and have PhDs. It would surprise you, but they make more money there than they can in their regular job. So the good thing that the hunting has allowed us to do is it's allowed us to get them a different job where they can make enough money in the 3-month season, 2-month season that are with us, that none of them no longer have to do that in the off season, which is really been good. It's been good for them. It's been good for their families, because you'll watch their kids and they grow up in this shit. And I'd follow someone on Instagram, and I could see once 10, 11, 13 had hit them, that's when they'd really be hit by the other side. And I could just see by the photos that they were posting, I knew where they were headed. So by us being able to show them just other resourceful ways to make income from it's cooking, cleaning, guiding, driving, spotting, skinning, it gives them enough income that they don't have to do that in the off season, because they don't really like to do it either. It puts them in a position that's always not, they can be caught, be put in jail, whatever. And probably their life is at risk at sometimes, but it's really helped us help out the communities, and they appreciate it. The ranchers, everybody benefits. I see some people who feel like on the Mexican side that, the gringos gone down there and they leave all their money in the U.S. That's not even close to the case. A lot of times I go down there and I'm like, I don't even want to go down here, because I'm not really, at the end of the day, I make little to nothing sometimes down there. Sometimes we'll have an okay year, and other years you just broke even. But I feel a sense of duty now that I just can't stop to go back and bring work to these communities, because they're counting on me, and I know they're counting on me. And it's more rewarding to me to be able to continue to bring that income and take people on those experiences it is than to make a lot of money down there, because you're never going to make a lot of money in this business in that state unless you really scale it. And it's hard to scale there, because I'll take 100 phone calls and maybe 3 will consider going to Mexico, because all they've done is watch the 6 o'clock news and they're afraid to go. Once they go there, then I'll end up with them times 5 of their buddies who will come back, and they'll be stuck there for life, because it's a warmer time to hunt, and it's a different environment. It's a different style of hunting that we don't have here in the States than they're used to. So it's extremely addictive to get down there and hunt that desert.
What is that style of hunting for those?
So in the northern part of the States, there's what's called tracking. And the only way you could do it here is if there's snow, because our foliage is just completely different in northern Utah, southwestern Wyoming, southern Idaho. You get down to southern Utah and you can get into some of that. But when you're in some of that beachy environment, you can just literally find a buck's track and follow it until you eventually jump that animal. Here, that's just not going to happen. Mule deer also will be call responsive down there, so you can use different calls to call them in. A lot of times it's a predator call, because if you ever go down there, you'll see that place is just coyote heaven. So these does and the bucks have to learn to stand up for themselves, and the coyotes are a little bit smaller, so they'll be responsive to certain predator calls to come in and as a challenge. High racking is illegal. You don't do it here In Utah, you can't ride in the back of a pickup truck. Here, the mule deer are really in the mountains. Down in Mexico, there's a few areas where they get a little bit of the foothills. Other than that, they only inhabit the valley floor. So you have to be in a vehicle that then has an elevated platform that you drive around in and shoot at them. So those are really the two different styles that you do down there. Sometimes three different styles that we just don't do here in the States. So it's fun. Plus it's 65, 75-degree weather, which is really nice. The bucks, the mule deer, which are the antlered animals down there, because we hunt mule deer, coos deer, and bighorn sheep. They're like the Mexican boxers. They fight. When they go to scrap, they'll break antlers completely off, and some of them have mass. It's like this big around. They're really heavy. That's just that part. And then there's another whole little area which is even more remote than the Sonoran Desert, which is called Tiburon Island. And I think you have some video of it here on us hunting the island. You hunt down there with what's called the Seri Indians. They're given usually 12 to 16 bighorn sheep tags per year through the state. Some Sheldoni, which it's a mule deer. It's really just a mule deer, but it's a different subspecies of mule deer, and they're found nowhere else in the world other than Tiburon or Shark Island. But you do have to ferry across. And when I say ferry, check out what this ferry is. It's not really a ferry. It's your truck strapped to two fishing boats, sometimes with baling twine, other times with wire. So you got a little clip of that there.
Yes, I do. Let's pull this thing open. There we go. First off, this is just crazy. It looks totally fake.
It does look totally fake, but there's us doing our pirate thing, right?
Yes.
Those are just two little skiffs with a F-150 on the back. We did lose a boat 2 years ago. We didn't lose a truck, though. We just lost generators, water. It was too heavy. Sometimes it'll take you 2 plus, maybe 3 days to cross, because if the seas are too violent, you can't get across. Yeah. If there's much tide or many waves, you're just going to have to wait for it to calm down and cross, because you get out into that area, and it's heavily shark infested. They've actually had great white sightings in there as well.
That's the Tiburon
That's why they call it the Tiburon Park. So you cross from the inland part over to the Tiburon part, and then there's really only one main road that kind of goes around that island. The rest of it is all remote and roadless, and you'll see a lot of the roads in a lot of places in Mexico. There's a lot of trash. It's not very well taken care of. That island is completely different. They don't allow you to remove rocks. They don't allow you to remove antlers. That's as unspoiled of a place as I know anywhere. You do have one road that will get you into it. Then from that, it's just all roadless, hardcore sheep country and
beautiful
Sheldoni deer. Oh, it's gorgeous. I've got a bunch of really cool clips from it. Yeah, that's how you get across. And that's their ferry system, and you can only use their ferry system. We have to hire so many Seri guides because we like to give the tribe as much work as possible. Then we'll bring our own guides. And then there's our
ferry. They're having a good time, too.
Going across the sea. It's crazy.
I couldn't even tell that these were two boats here until it got closer.
Yeah, they're just tied together with rope, and then there's some ramps that you'll ramp them on with on the beach, and away you go.
They're running off one engine over here? Or?
Yeah, they'll run off one engine. Sometimes they'll add a third boat, but the one boat's a floater, the other one has the engine on it. And there's usually only one guy who does all the crossings. He's just been doing it for years. He probably maybe 30, but he's pretty good at it.
Yeah, it looks amazingly beautiful. So where on a map would this be? This section of land right here?
That section of land, it's in the Sea of Cortez. So if you want to look down, right along, if you follow it all the way to the tip on that side, you get past the island, then to the other side, you can follow it all the way down to Cabo if you wanted.
How long would it take to learn all these things? You said you started to be comfortable for 10 to 15 years out there. How long would it have taken you to learn all these things without the right person?
I'd end up having one ranch down there, and that's it. You wouldn't be able to do any sort of scaling. You wouldn't be able to have any other sort of side offerings, and I would do it within 1 hour from Hermosillo. I would have no way to deal with all the other everyday things that come up without the right person down there. And I have the best person / best friend in the world down there. So it's been a blessing, actually. It's been a blessing for him, too.
What was the learning curve like in terms of the different stages? So you said it took 10 to 15 years, and then you were able to find the right guy, the right person. Talk about building that up from practically no understanding and saying, hey, I'm going to go do these trips in Mexico to year 2, year 3, year 7, all the way to now.
So year 1 was a 17-year-old kid who really wanted me to book hunts for him down there. This was a long time ago, and I'm like, man, I don't want to go to Mexico. I'm too scared. I was just afraid to go to Mexico. Eventually, my friend talked me into going down there with him, and then I got to see the size of the deer that inhabit that country. And there were more big deer down there than there are now. And just how unspoiled it was, and the culture. that part addicted me. And I knew eventually I'd be doing business, but I never had the right feeling with this person to do business. So I waited. I'd still take some guys down there and we would just do a hunt with this younger person. And he would line up some properties and we'd stay in literally what's called a tack shed with stinky horse saddles, etc., as we moved around to these different places. But we had the opportunity to harvest and kill just deer that are not really available here in the U.S. because they don't have the opportunity to get old like they do in that vast desert country. Then eventually I decided I need to scale this because properties are getting, all the billionaires actually, and where I'm at in Morgan County, Summit County, not millionaires anymore. It's billionaires are buying up a lot of our bigger ranches. For me to continue to be able to do this and survive, I had to look elsewhere, and there's all kinds of opportunity for me south of the border. So I partnered up with this guy, and by probably year 7, I was finally starting to get over my fear and me getting sick every time I was going down there, which I really learned was it's just a cook and me needing to teach the cook how to properly wash their hands and properly wash the food to make sure nobody got that traveler's diarrhea, which we don't have happen anymore. And then understanding their permitting process, which they have a process, but nobody follows it. Or I should say very few people follow it. So it took me a while to learn their permitting process, how they create what's called a UMO, which is what we call a CWMU here in Utah, which is a way to get guaranteed tags that are property specific that then give you the season where you can hunt coos deer, mule deer, or if it's available, bighorn sheep on that property. And then acquiring cooks, good cooks. We went from just local home style cooks to we've stolen some 5-star chefs who, in the other season, they'll go work for the cruise ships, and we have some banger chefs down there now. And then the equipment, because I didn't realize that I can't just, for a while, just bring trucks across, leave them down there. They have to be 10 years or older. Otherwise, I just can't bring them down there. And I had to be a temporary resident at that time so I could register other vehicles to bring down there. So it took a while to build up. It's a pretty big investment when you're talking about Mexico, and anything that happens on the news can change my people wanting to book just like that. We have 15 trucks down there. So we're a pretty large, likely the largest operation for fair chase big game hunts in the state of Sonora. But it's that once I got Chewy on board, being able to really understand what it takes to navigate that country safely and successful. And as I look back with my old dude, I was just like the other gringos. I was getting lucky. I was very naive to everything that needed to happen in the back end. And I also had to learn to, when certain issues would crop up, I'm like, nah, screw that. We need to go handle that. Or no, that's bullshit. We're not going to allow that. Mm-hmm. Learning that I have to just allow some of these uncontrollables, and that's just the way that it is. But it's taken a long time to build it, but we have a good thing going there now, and it runs like a almost well-oiled ship. There's always a few little things in any ship, right, that you're going to get a little creek here and there, and you have to go take care of it. But it's great. It's just some of the best country in the world. There's a lot of things people probably don't know. There's a canyon in Mexico bigger than the Grand Canyon, double the size, called Cooper Canyon.
No idea.
Nobody's heard about it. There's so many things that I wish the U.S. and Mexico could figure out their relationship a little bit better, because there's a lot of opportunity for Americans and Mexicans on both sides of the border. Let's cooperate a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So
you mentioned how the news can affect your bookings and people wanting to head out there. How has it been recently? What has the talk been? Cartel is now labeled as a terrorist organization, much more far left leaning or administration down in Mexico, and really the deepening contrasts in many ways. And then also, of course, the border situation over the last 4 years, all those kind of things. How is that the business of people's view?
Well, right now, people are more reluctant to go with Trump because they feel like there's going to be a war, but the other people respect Trump a lot more than they did the Biden organization. Actually, we had to get rid of a lot of our border ranches because they made it just such a pain in the ass to deal with. It was a pain in the ass for the locals as well, because you'll see limousine bus after limousine bus flying down the freeway. They're not going on vacation to Nogales, Sonoita. They were going to meet their coyote to pay their $8,000 a piece and be escorted through the desert. We'd sit on ranches and be glassing down there, and there's just a train of people heading out through the desert to get across to what they believed is a better life, but that is shut off now. And
by the way, 8,000
for me, that's a good thing. Oh yeah, see, people don't understand. They feel like these guys are just coming in, they're just coming across the border. Hell no. There's nobody that gets across there for free. I wanted to get some of my guys back there. I'm like, why don't you come help me in the off season? Then I realized it cost me $5,000 to get them there if I wanted them. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay $5,000 because they got a little bit of a discount because that's what they helped do before. During the Biden administration, it was a shit show, honestly. It was a freaking joke. It was easy to book people down there because people were, for whatever reason, less afraid, but there was a lot more activity in every area, especially anytime you get near the border. But for us, we never experienced a lot of that hardcore border violence that they might around, say, along Texas on that Gulf cartel. There's different cartels down there and they have different rules. These are more the old guys who have this respect, if that's what you want to call it. So they do have rules that they follow. The other guys are just, they're brutal, but we're not in that Chihuahua all the way down. We're just in the state of Sonora. It's really not bad. You come down to Huntington, you're not even going to see any of it because we're not going to put you in an area where you would see it. You could go down there and get in trouble, just like you could come here in the U.S. and go to the wrong area and get in trouble. You need to go down and experience. Everybody should. You'll be addicted just like if you want a little bit of danger, you can go somewhere else and get your danger on. You won't be going with me, but you'll be going with someone else. But they're really respectful people. It's been life-changing, actually. It's got rid of some of my internal feelings toward what we'd call Mexicans and the immigration. They work in some of the most poor conditions just for them to even travel their freeways and how much they have to be stopped and how much bullshit they have to deal with just to drive down the damn freeway, just to go 2 hours from city to city. It's something we take for granted here. And you can see why their might grow if they have to stop what I'd call interstate commerce at that level and how hard it is. And then you're treated better when you get on the Mexican side of the border than you are as soon as you hit the United States. I go through the United States and honestly, I feel like most of those people that work at the United States border, they're dicks, they're douchebags. They treat you like you're a criminal. They treat everybody like they're a criminal. They'll tear your truck apart. They'll be looking for a shit antler. They think you're trying to take it back because you do need an actual permit. The deer drops its antler on this side of the border. Well, you need a permit to take it back on that side. But they haggle you like hell to get back in the U.S. It's not that bad coming back on the Mexican side. It's a lot more respect. I think they're, my experience, and they're extremely disrespectful and they're douchebags. I hate coming back into the U.S. So the deal.
I think for people to understand that you mentioned is just the way that the police asking you for money in Mexico is police don't ask you for money here in the United States. And it's just a way of life down there. It's a way that things function and flow. And that'd be an interesting piece to expand on. But I think what's also more interesting is what would help to change people's minds further, people that are listening, of the way things are, and that really just to break some of those barriers that you probably went through in your mind of your preconceptions to where you are today. You feel comfortable over there. You enjoy it over there. You're addicted to going over there and having those experiences that kind of environment can provide, and really working with the local people to live your life.
Sure. Because I go to Cancun, Cabo, Puerto Vallarta, whatever you want to call it, a lot. When you first fly in, you're just inundated with what people, said as coyotes, like you're being attacked from every angle. Hit some of the smaller areas. Go to San Carlos, where it's a lot easier to get across and you don't get that they're trying to take every dollar from you as soon as you step off the plane type of deal, and it'll change your mindset. And hit some of the smaller towns. Stay away from the border towns for sure, but go a little bit deeper into the state and hit some of the smaller towns and just really mingle with the people. And you're going to find people that have a sense of community that we don't have. When I grew up, we had a sense of community here because everybody was a lot less financially fortunate. So you had to rely on your neighbors more. And in Mexico, they still have to rely on their neighbors. So their sense of community is extremely tight. Our sense of community out here it's loose. In some areas, our sense of community here feels like a prostitute. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
It's as loose as can be. So it connects you to, it gives you a better connection to people when you go there than it does here. You don't get the connection to people in the U.S. like you do when you go south of the border.
The rugged individualism of the United States citizenry.
Exactly. And just see how innovative they are, what they have, what they can get, what they can use in their own environment to go with and get away with and just enjoy life, even on a much smaller financial scale. They do struggle, but you would think that we struggle more because they're so much more happier than we are. That's my experience. So that's what I have to report.
Yeah, we're driven by work. We're driven by productivity. And I think I've said this on a previous show or podcast or just in general in life. It's amazing how programmed we are to do those things, and who knows how and why, but Americans just, work. And then a lot of people that are coming from South America, like my wife included and her family and others that she's talked with, it's just work is so important here. You come to the United States and everybody is just working as much as they can. They might get another job. They're just trying to work and exist in our society versus there. Yes, there's a heavy work ethic, but the way that we approach work and the way that we just almost, it becomes our idol is so important for us here versus there's that deeper sense of community, connection, relationship, and whatnot.
We're definitely more of a machine, which has taken me along. I still struggle with it when I'll tell them, need you here right at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock rolls around, 5:15 rolls around. And I always tell them 30 minutes early now because I know that they're just going to come in a little bit lower and you just can't shake it out of them because I don't feel like they're as stressed of a population as we are. I'm on edge constantly going, we need you here at 5 because we got to be left at 5:15 or we got to have the truck loaded by 5:15. Then it's wheels up at 5:30. It doesn't happen like that. It's more of a flow, but it does. Over time, when you get used to it, you really do appreciate it. And if you just surrender to it, you'll find yourself a lot less stressed out. As soon as I get back here, it's click, click. We're more of a factory that just churns and churns. And they still work and continue to work. And they work. They're the hardest working people you're ever going to find. But they do it at their own pace.
Definitely. When did you make your first firearm? How did you gain that skill? It seems like an extremely complex thing.
I'm a self-taught dude. Here I am with all these CNC machines. Thank goodness for YouTube a little bit for sure. I was just something I was always interested in. Before, I was always into this long-range shooting. I'd say I wasn't really a better hunter when I grew up than a lot of the other people. A lot of people I knew probably hunted harder than I did. I just figured out how to hunt smarter. So I got into the long-range game. I didn't grow up with I never had a firearm when I grew up. My dad had an open sight 32 Winchester Special. It was handed down from his old man. So I actually I won the big deer contest, which they no longer have here in Hanover, Utah, to acquire my first firearm. But it was just something that I like. I'm a tinkerer by nature, you know what I mean? Tinkering with things and figuring it out. And guns, where I grew up on the back roads here of a town with less than 1,000 people, about 640 people when I grew up. Maybe it's 1,000 now. And so the outdoors was my playground, which I'm extremely grateful for now. And so I would just take a gun, a BB gun, and I'd go. And so I was always learning how to shoot further, how I can shoot precisely further. Because, with my dad, we went out deer hunting one time, and it's called Kentucky windage, where you aim higher and higher and higher with a set of open sights. And there really wasn't much precision in that. So nobody around here could ever kill anything, to use completely honest words, not shoot, it's kill. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. So I learned how to manipulate those firearms. When I say manipulate, it was mostly just do what they call betting, and this was before YouTube, so you had to read magazines or order some videos from the American Gun Institute, etc. And it was just something that I got a little bit of attention for because I could do a better job at it, so then people were willing to compensate me for it. So I just got deeper and deeper into it. And then when the internet really came on, the forums were there, I would go read through all the forums, and people would tell me, oh, yeah, you need an old school, screw all this CNC bullshit. And so I really just listened to those old school gunsmiths, started hanging out with them a little bit. I read that there was a estate sale in Texas, and so I went down and bought my first lathe in Texas. I don't know why. Now I know a lot more. I wouldn't have drove all the way down there to buy a 16 by 40 Victor lathe, but I did, and then I had to bring it back, and then I just had to get some scrap and just through repetitiveness learn how to thread and chamber a barrel. And then I bought my first little Haas CNC mill. It's called a TL1. I still have it to this day because I feel like it's one of the better lathes to chamber off of. And then I learned what a CNC was. And then I learned what a fool I was by using that old manual equipment because these are so repeatable. And then I bought another mill. And it's really this looks crazy because I've got about $1.5 million here in machinery I have 3 mills. I have two other lathes over here and a EDM and a CMM. So I've got a lot of money tied up to it, way more than just your average gunsmith, because I just wanted to, how do I build my own receivers? How do I build my own bolts? How do I build my own scope rings? I still don't manufacture the barrel because as you learn about that, you learn that's really an art. It's if you're going to build a race car, are you going to build the tires too? No, you're going to go from someone who just does tires. So I use some of the better manufacturers. One of my favorite for certain calibers, Krieger. They all do, I'll buy a Krieger and a blank, and then we'll do the contour, or sometimes I'll order contoured as well. And then do all the other outside machining. The stocks I order in a blank. I don't make the stock. I order in just a blank form from Macmillan. Even there's a lot of other really good stocks out there, but I feel like Macmillan has the hardest shell. So it offers the least amount of forearm flex when you're loading a firearm, which all that consistency will translate into accuracy. So I prefer their shells, even though if you cut it apart, they don't do as good a job as their feel is Manners and some of the other manufacturers, but their shell is extremely hard. So I just would watch YouTube and I'd buy a machine, say, hey, I know you only come with a week of demo, but I want 2 weeks worth of demo, and just learn to figure it out. I still haven't really got the greatest with that EDM, which cuts the raceways, which is where your bolts fits in, but I've just continued to advance on it. And so it started with that, and I would teach long range schools as well. I used to do all the stuff out west here for the NRA before the Vegas shooting, because we'd have their shooting schools, and then the word shooting school was no longer popular, so we changed it to long range training, and then they fizzled out their outdoor program. And so I just do private courses now. I have another enclosed building here. I have a shooting range right behind this building. You can actually shoot and dial in right out the window here. And so I teach a lot of long range shooting as well. That's really my forte when it comes to killing stuff. That's what I do.
It is what you do well.
Yeah, I'm a professional at killing shit. I can kill.
Which is awesome. What about that rifle behind you?
That's one that I've recently done. It's a more popular caliber. It's called a precision rifle cartridge, is what Hornady. This stuff's just come a long ways. A lot of this could be the ammunition. Like all of my custom firearms, I'll also hand tune the ammunition. Just like if you had a race car, you're going to fine tune the tuning of the engine. So I'll hand load everything. But in recent years, Hornady, and I have to give them a hats off because I feel like they're really one of the game changers in this. They have came out with these PRC cartridges, and they have the Creedmoors as well. But the PRC, that particular caliber and that particular firearm and this particular twist rate, which I'm not going to tell you the twist rate in it because we've adjusted the twist rate just a little bit. You can go buy a set of factory ammunition for $50, and you can literally one hole yourself at 200 yards. Sometimes it's even harder now to hand load ammunition better than what I can shoot these 180 ELDMs with that particular twist rate, with that particular barrel manufacturer, and that one's not a Krieger.
You made it all yourself.
Yeah.
Aside from the barrels, you acquired some of the parts from manufacturers.
Yeah, so that barrel, I mean, we did all the OD work on it. The receivers, the scope manufacturers, not ours. It's a Husqvarna. Some guys like them, some guys love them. I like them because they still hold the patent on their wind technology. You know, it's just a holdover. To keep it simple, stupid, so I can put it in most people's hands, and from 0 to 800 yards, they just do what I tell them, and stuff's going to die. We'll run some SIG ballistic software, some AB, some applied ballistics, a Kestrel weather meter, and then a watch. So we got a lot of redundancy in our dope. But that one I've shot it a little bit. I haven't been these other firearms that are in my personal repertoire, which I run a 300 Win mag. I don't run the PRC yet because I hand load my 300 Win mag. I run a 338 Norma mag, and I run a 7 SOM, which is called the short action ultra mag, and just the good old Creedmoor, because I can buy factory ammunition that shoots really well out of it, and 6.5 by 284. And if you're in front of those, you're dead.
What is the sub-minute of action, the SubMOA, your firearms? What is the minute of action?
Minute of angle stands
Minute
for
of angle, okay.
minute of angle. I thought everybody knew what minute of angle was when I come up with SubMOA, but most people don't. They're like, what's SubMOA or SubMOA? I'm like, it's sub-minute of angle, which minute of angle just means something smaller than 1.047 inches at 100 yards. From an accuracy standpoint, minute of angle isn't really that great, but it's the standard. It's decent. Half minute, quarter minute, but to be consistent in a quarter minute, that's all the time. That's pretty damn hard, or somewhat impossible, even though people bullshit and say, yeah, I got a quarter minute gun. I'm like, okay, throw me a 10-shot string through that, not a 3-shot string, and let's see what really happens, because these extreme distances, what people don't realize, there's so many things that comes into play. Just how you even manage the recoil. When you're managing the recoil, that firearm is going to come back in your shoulder before the barrel's actually left the bullet, or the bullet's actually left the barrel, so your launch angle is going to change. Any little bit of difference in the wind is going to throw that left, or depending how the wind angle's coming, it might be what's called aerodynamic jump, which you can jump up at a different oddball angle. Or if you get, it's impossible. These aren't laser beams, so they all don't come out of there at the same FPS, which stands for feet per second. One comes out of there at 10 different feet per second, and you're shooting at a mile, you're going to have a different impact point. You're going to have a different hit or miss. So you just have to learn your firearm all the time and log it. Once you log it, just run a firearm that you feel comfortable with, that you're proficient with, that you can manage the recoil well, and your hit percentage is going to go up. But we kill stuff at extreme ranges with that .338. I usually use that. We call it the client saver that way. If they make a less than perfect shot, we're still going to retrieve that animal.
And you mentioned now that you've taken people on 1,500 hunts. You've probably done thousands of hunts in your life. Aside from the Matt story being a memorable hunt, from a kill perspective, was there any particular hunt that you remember most or hold at the top of your list of your favorite hunter experience for any reason?
I've had so many of those. They're all rolling into one. I did have one. This guy, his name was Joe Hill. He ended up calling me son number 2, and I ended up calling him dad by the time the relationship was over. In the beginning, he was the biggest pain in the ass client I've ever had in my entire life, and by the end, he ended up being my best friend. He was also the only person who I've ever had in camp who donated exclusively to the Democrats. In fact, one year I told him, and he actually kept his word, that I was going to charge him exactly the price amount on his hunt was going to be exactly what he contributed to the Hillary Clinton campaign. He dropped $70,000 of the Hillary Clinton campaign. That was the most expensive moose hunt in the life. But we took him on. He went on one hunt that I didn't happen to be there, but it's a pretty funny hunt story, actually. The last hunt I was on with him was right before he passed away, so that was memorable. But I was able with him, and he was 5'5" and waxed and waned anywhere from 460 to 520 pounds. So a very big guy. And he really wasn't mobile at all, so he would only hunt with me, and he could only hunt in the truck, and we would get out of the truck, and I would set up the firearm, and he would get in that firearm, and he killed a moose, a Boone and Crockett moose at 1,288 yards. He killed
which is just almost under a mile, right? It's
1760 miles. So he killed a mule deer with me at 1,862 yards. Because for him, that's what I had to do. We'd have to sit up on a perch, and then anything in a 1,000-yard radius, because I like to keep it under 1,000 yards with him, but sometimes there were other opportunities when conditions were right where we could do some extreme shooting, and I don't have a picture of him available, but I can get you one so you can see.
Yeah.
I'll get you one so you can see what a big guy he is. And he killed this deer at 1,862 yards. It wasn't a big buck, but it was all about him wanting to break our personal client long-range record. And he did one shot, one kill with that .338 Norma mag with a 300 grain Burger hybrid. He actually heart shot it at that distance, and it was pretty incredible. But you'll see he's a big guy. After I took the photo of him, he got mad at me, threw that photo at me. You made me look fucking fat.
I know.
He thanked me for it later. He's like, no, I didn't realize I was that big of a guy. Thank you. But I have a lot of fun stories with him. One of the stories that I don't have with him is we were hunting Snow Basin Ski Resort. We used to actually lease that, and so we would hunt on the resort side. And he was a big guy, so he couldn't walk anywhere. And he loved to tell this story. He thought it was the funniest thing in the world. We don't have it on video, but it's verified. I'm not making this story up. They went out to shoot a moose, and he was with one of my guides named Cody Whittier and Justin Whittier. And Cody can come up with these crazy harebrained ideas. He's just ADD like me, thinks 100 miles an hour. And Justin was more of a slow, even-keeled killer. He's quite the killer, too, himself. And they'd seen this moose, and it was just right off the road on the ski run. But the moose stepped off the side of the ski run. So you got like a level cut, imagine a cut in the heel. And then there's a high side of the bank. And the moose just stepped off in the brush, and so Joe couldn't see it. So they had so much pressure on him. And all Cody could think of, this is what he later told me, is he got the story of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where they rolled Violet the fat girl into place. They put him down, and he tells the story. I was looking up at him, wanting to know what the hell they're doing. They made him lay down, and they put his arms together, and they rolled him over the bank. So he rolled down off the bank because he was afraid of breaking an ankle if he stepped on that ground. And they got behind him, and they pushed him up, and he was able to shoot the moose. It was still only 70 yards away, pretty close. But Cody told me all he could remember was his head was going like this, like a little bobblehead as he rolled over the edge. And he was digging rocks out of his ass crack for the next week and a half. So, yes. But I have all gobs of crazy stories, but nothing as crazy as getting arrested at the border. Yeah, but we've been doing big game hunts here in Utah and Wyoming and Idaho for as long as I can remember. This is what I do, man. I know how to kill.
You mentioned when we first talked that you have a manufacturing company, or is that SubMOA?
This is SubMOA.
Okay.
We're not large scale or any means. I've never produced more than 49 rifles in a year, because once you produce 50, you have to pay your excise tax for the entire batch. And I do them myself. We did have some employees. I got rid of the employees because I never focused on it solely to grow it as a business. So it's been an expensive hobby that I could easily scale if I wanted to, but I like doing it. I like doing those myself. I like the machining. I like the dial in. I like figuring out the dial in, but I don't like shooting the firearms as much as I used to because all those heavy recoils, I've shot them so much, maybe I have some TBI. It doesn't take much recoil for me to now get massive migraines. So I have to pick and choose what I'm going to shoot, or if I'm going to shoot a heavy caliber firearm like a 300 or 7 mag, depending on what I'm running, I'll have to put it in a heavier platform because my body just can't handle the pounding anymore. But in a month, I'd fill up a 50-gallon drum full of brass, and that went on for years, year on year. Not only would I build firearms myself, I would do a lot of setup for other people's firearms. So they'd send them in, and I would tweak them and build a load for them.
You made your living doing things you absolutely love.
Yeah, I do. Sometimes I wonder if that was the right choice because I'm a little bit more numb to big deer, and I love them, but it doesn't get me. I'm like, oh man, we got to go. I'm way more methodical about it now. I'm just more smooth, so to speak. Same with firearms. Firearms, I never got into any of the competition. I hosted a few competitions, but I was afraid if I did, that I would hate it. And I'm glad that I never got into the competition side of things. So I enjoy taking people hunting. I enjoy guiding them and making their trip successful and hearing their life story and just becoming a friend and adding them to my network. Same with firearms. I love teaching people how to shoot, and I love with the technology these days. It's not that hard to have someone ring and still at a mile by the end of the day or 1,000 yards in a couple hours, and without going over all the nerd stuff, just to quickly break the ice and show them that it's possible. Breaking that mindset. Forever, some of the reasons I got into long range shooting, we get most of our hunters are from out east. They come out here and you tell them that it's 400 yards away. And they go, 400 yards? Holy shit, I've never shot over 200 yards. So I started lying to them because I just tell them a whole point. Hold here, do this. I'd be like, that's only 300 yards. That's only 200 yards. It'd be 4 or 5, stretch 600. They wouldn't believe me, but I just found myself lying to them all the time. So then we need to be able to still keep this population as the population aged. They couldn't hunt anymore because they were more confined to a truck. So by being able to really figure out how to guide at extreme distances, I can handle anybody from any age and any physical disability. And we've taken a lot of combat wounded vets who are missing arms, missing legs, or we've actually had to have guys fire pneumatically with their mouth and remote camera systems. And so for me, I love the journey. The animal's the reward.
Always finding a way, making a way,
Yep.
Being self-taught, being meticulous. For those who want to be self-taught and pick up new skills, what would you recommend from your learning? Like you said, you were immersed in it, you met people, you were meticulous, you're a tinkerer. What are some of the takeaways for people who want to be self-taught in any field?
Well, these lucky bastards these days have YouTube. So that makes it a lot easier. You won't find as much gun stuff on YouTube, though, them bastards. But you have to, for me, I had to create a picture in my mind of me being able to do it and then hold that picture in my mind. Because if I never visualized myself doing it, I, for some reason, felt like I never ended up there. I'd set smaller goals, even in the early stages of my life, because I dropped out of school. The last day of school, I remember my teacher saying, I got in a fight with the counselor. And so I purposely didn't graduate because she's like, you're going to need this more than you think. I'm like, no, I'm not. Really stupid looking back, but it was more like, yeah, I can do it. I'm going to show you I'm going to do it. Just trying to prove a point, which was the dumbest thing to do possibly. So I started out with really low income jobs and being a laborer in a trench. But you just have to be more forward thinking. Don't have a 1-day plan or a 2-day plan, have a 5-year plan, have a 10-year plan, and different ways to increase your wage. I did jump around quite a bit in the beginning, and then I found a little bit of a niche in excavating. I could do that if I wanted to as a full time, but I started out in the ditch and I saved everything that I made for 3 weeks because I wanted to be an operator because that was $10 an hour difference. So what I did in 3 weeks is I went and rented a piece of equipment over the weekend. I saved up all my money and they delivered the piece of equipment. I spent the weekend learning to run it enough where I could fake it till you make it. I quit that job because they knew I wasn't an operator. Went and jumped on as another job on something that I felt that I could, and I increased my wage by 10 bucks an hour just like that. And so then I would learn to run the next piece of equipment. So I could run a dozer, an excavator, a grader, most of your earthworking equipment, and just continue to bump my wage. And then I was always guiding part-time. And right when I was actually installing fiber optics, doing a lot of trenching, and then I knew that was coming to an end. So I figured out how to get onto the maintenance side, meaning their amp sites and their regen sites, but it would take me through the back country. And I always made sure that I had another job on the side because I just couldn't make enough money to be able to buy my other little toys, you know what I mean? Because I had kids at the time and a wife, and I had to support a big family as well. So for me to be able to have more, I had to want more and had to prove more and had to do more, that I would save up. So I bought that lathe. I bought that lathe just saving my guide tips up. And because I was able to do that, I increased my skill set. I could probably, well, I could go run a machine. I'd be a button pusher if I wanted to, or I learned CAD CAM, and I also learned some design software called Space Claim by ANSYS. So it's just little step by step, always trying to do things to make myself more marketable. Just before thinking, but you got to envision yourself doing it. Set a goal, find something you're passionate about, and take baby steps and cheat a little bit along the way. Shit, everybody else does it. Nobody was born knowing how to do stuff. Someone has to teach them. Whether you have to teach yourself, you do learn a lot more teaching yourself, but it also sometimes takes you a lot longer to get there. So if you can find an expert in your field and mentor, looking back on the machining side of things, I honestly would have just went and worked for the shop and told them I don't want anything. I'll just work here for free, because the knowledge is what I was after. The money is important, but you gain the knowledge, you'll get the money.
And then what about the creating a picture part? Do you actually visualize that, or you just spend so much time doing it and thinking about it that?
No, I visualize it. I'll spend as much time thinking about it at home as I will when I'm actually here doing it. My sleep suffers because of it, but I've accomplished a lot of things in life that I think I've nailed every goal that or every dream that I had at that time. Some other dreams for me have recently been buying land and purchasing land, and I visualized myself doing it. Once you visualize yourself doing it, you have to create a way, and then you'll figure out a way to do it. You just have to stay motivated and have to stay on top of it. So now my latest thing is I'm not as much in the gun shop as I'm always looking for land, because I'm a land dude too. I've spent a lot of time on land, so land's a good place to put your money. I tried the stock market, wasn't very good at day trading. I've done okay at crypto, then I lost at crypto. I'm not going to be dedicated enough on stuck in front of a computer all day long to follow those financial markets and the crypto. I've done okay, but I've also lost okay too.
And your process for visualization is just sitting there and going through it as much as you can. You find that when you begin something, because as you were saying that, I definitely have had those experiences as well. You can be pushing on something to try to grow and learn and develop in it. But then until you actually sit down and you get it in your mind, it's like in the beginning part, it's almost not there and you want it to be there. The image, the feeling, the sensation, or what is it? What do you focus on particularly that has helped you? Or is it just kind of obsession that over the long period of time, you're focusing on the same thing and eventually it's going to be there in your mind? Or what's that process look like?
I'll definitely have the long-term goal in mind, but then I'll start to obsess. I'll know what the steps are. I'll come up with what I believe the steps are. New steps will come along the way, or the path, and you'll find out you'll end up taking a different path halfway through it, or even as you begin. But you have to visualize each step, and you have to accomplish each step. Once you get to that step, you get a high from it, honestly. Then the high is over with. So you're like, shit, what I got to do next? So you get to the next step and you figure it out. And don't be a stranger. I would have got here a lot quicker if I would have been surrounding myself with other like-minded people. I've just been so hard-headed that I wanted to have my own ideas, but I've met a lot of people who were along my journey who are definitely more intelligent than I am. One in this machining side, I nicknamed him Shiniko, which is Eric. That dude's one of the sharpest dudes I've ever met. And because I help him out, we become such good friends. He's my tech support on anything. He's the most knowledgeable guy you'll ever meet, but I'm good friends with him because I also treat him right. So I keep that relationship. And be yourself. People will see through your bullshit. They'll know if you're speaking out your ass or if you're being passionate about it, or if you really know the subject and can explain the subject in a way that they're like, oh yeah, I trust this guy. Clearly this guy knows what he's doing, or no, I don't really trust that guy. He speaks well, or he speaks like he knows the terminology, but it doesn't flow fluid enough, and you can tell that he's not passionate enough about it. There's a difference when I put you with a guy. If you come on a hunt, I'll get rid of my guides who are not passionate about it, because that passion transfers over. Even if we'll have a hunt that's not successful, because everybody does, we're hunting fair chase animals. But if they were with a guy that was passionate and he busted his ass from sunup to sundown, and they could see that we're passionate about making their outdoor experience become a reality, however that was, they'll be thankful customers and repeat customers at the end of the day. Hopefully that answered your question and I didn't get sidetracked.
No, it did.
I'm a little bit ADD, so I'll go off on little tangents here.
No worries. Definitely got the insight there. So I have two final questions here. What was it like blowing up on TikTok? Obviously, you said you're a father, you had 2 daughters, I believe, and your TikTok channel went 1 million+ followers. What was that?
Sure. That was pretty cool, actually. I have all of my children have different things that they're naturally really good at. And so I've never put boundaries around. Even my daughters, they went out in the world. I have one who's a taxidermist, who was a hunting guide. She'll freaking put dudes to shame. She likes taking their man cards away because I didn't treat them like they were just, oh, you're little girls and you got to do girl shit. You know what I mean? I always took them out and let them do they got to do their dancing and their tumbling and the feminine side of things, but I also took them out and let them do everything manly and everything hard as possible. They can shoot, they can hike. They're pretty tough children. So like I was saying, they'll have their own natural talent, but KB in particular, one time, I heard her singing. I heard her really singing. I like, what the hell is that? And I knew that she had a pretty special gift. She was on Musically, which I think became TikTok, if I'm not mistaken. And I'd watch her do this. So I created a TikTok account just to poke fun at her a little bit because I thought that app was dumb. And so I'd tease her when I was riding I deleted all that shit. I'd be riding my Harley in my underwear just to get at her and embarrass her a little bit. And to try to maybe somewhat help her get discovered. And Joe Hill, the same guy that I was talking about that I took on those moose hunts who passed away, he died kidney failure eventually. And so they were all really close to him too. We went out in the car because I was going through a divorce years prior to that at the same time. So it was our way. We'd go get in the car and her and her little sister would sing and I'd deal with stuff. And it was also to try to get KB to build confidence so she could see how amazing that she could see herself the way I see herself, which is, I think until recently, she's never seen herself that way because she's never visualized it. But now, I'll tell you the story in a minute, she has finally visualized herself that way. We posted it on TikTok and it blew up. It just started going crazy because I was raw. I just was true to herself in it. I was raw and emotional and I definitely shed a tear. And then it started to go viral. RTV flew in and wanted to do a little bit of a piece on us. And then 100,000, 200,000. And I continued to post that media. Haven't posted for quite a while now. And then I started to post some of that stuff on YouTube and she got 250,000 followers on there and it blew up. Eventually she ended up on American Idol because of it. She was last year on American Idol. She finished 8th on that, which hindsight's 2020. I wish we'd have pulled her out right before she did top 20. But it was a good learning experience for her. She's now in LA and Nashville and doing her thing. But that TikTok thing, as it started to evolve, I just realized through the messages that I was getting that I didn't realize how many kids didn't have a dad or didn't have a mother or didn't have a role model. And I get all kinds of emails, even, when the Gulf War was going on, we'd get, or I'm not sure if it was going on or not at that point, people in Afghanistan, but we'd get messages from people who were overseas and telling them how it was making them connect and feel close to their family. And I get all these messages from kids, on how good it is to see a father that can allow their kids to sing in front of them and not feel embarrassed and just let them be them. So rather than take sponsorships, we make a little bit of money off of it from the viewerships on YouTube and TikTok. But if you check my emails every day, there's 6, 10, there's at least 5 or 6 emails wanting sponsorships. And we might do that at some point, but it was more about, I didn't want to get, pimped out to the point where sponsors owned me and I had to create content that was not who we were or to plug a product that I didn't believe in and products that I sure as hell wouldn't plug around kids either, like e-cigs and a bunch of other shit, which I call soft porn to full porn. That's where that's going to lead them. I'm not putting any of that shit on there and I don't give a shit. I don't want the money that bad. It's more about, felt like it became more inspirational. And so that continued to blow up. But recently, KB, she felt like she just come back from LA and she has a bunch of songs that she hasn't released yet because she's not really found who she is. But she told me she doesn't play the guitar, but she finally got a guitar and would strum a little bit and then could feel music a little bit different. But she started to visualize herself actually being successful and what it would look like with her on stage because we come from a small town. So for her all of a sudden being stuck on a national stage and dealing with her Hashimoto's, she had extreme anxiety, almost disabling to the point. But once she started to get that experience and visualize herself taking these steps, when she visualized herself, so she told me, I finally visualized myself doing it and I can see myself doing it. And she says, and now I can see myself actually becoming a star. And I know that she will be because she's so damn good. She really is. She really actually is. And I know it. I know I have a good ear and I know I felt like she should have just done country because I don't think doesn't take that much skill to be that good in country. No offense, country people. There's some good country music out there, but there's some people who just can put a good melody, but really are not the greatest singers or artists. But so she's going to find herself, but it's also trying to always prop them up. I try to prop them up as much as possible, which needs to be done to the youth. that didn't happen for me. You know what I mean? I guess it did. My grandmother would always tell me that I'm smart, tell me I'm a little bit of a little shit too, but she'd always tell me that I'm smart. So then I started to believe maybe I am smart if someone's telling me that I'm smart.
Can resonate with that
For sure.
That's why I chose my wife, and she's probably watching this. I chose my wife because I knew that, like, when we first started meeting, that she would be supportive to our children and give them that kind of positive voice and support in their mind to make them believe in themselves and see the possibilities for themselves. So definitely resonate there.
The life journey is interesting. Like, I'm remarried now and I'm not with their mom anymore. I'm lucky for them. I've been able to get remarried and I feel like we're the best blended family that there is. We get along well. My current wife also is able to provide them. Man, I wouldn't think it was possible. I didn't want to ever get divorced because I was afraid you'd never find another person who would love and be able to support your kids the way you did. Because I couldn't see myself loving and supporting someone else's kids the way I like my own kids. So that's why I'm thinking about that. But no, I have a stepson who I call my son right now and who thinks of me as his second father. And they think of my wife as her second mother. And she's so freaking intelligent. She's Asian as well. I grew up in a little white community and definitely had my run-ins with the Hispanic community. Maybe a little bit racist, if you want to say it in that aspect. But if you have any racism in you, go jump in their culture for a minute. It'll cure you of it, because I love Hispanics. And now I'm with a blended mixed family as well. And it's been phenomenal. I'm with one of the smartest, most beautiful, best person that is just so good for me. You have to have everything in order too, to back up a little bit. If you're a faith guy, you make sure you got to have your faith in order. And this is what I've noticed. If anything's out of sync, everything's out of sync. You know what I mean? If my business is out of sync, it affects my family life. And I'm not a God guy, but I find my spirituality somewhere else. But when that gets out of sync, it just affects everything. When my family life's out of sync, everything's out of sync. If I feel like I'm even getting remotely out of sync with my wife, everything goes to shit. You know what I mean? So you have to have balance. You have to balance all those things. You can't overly focus on one too much or the rest get out of balance, because it takes a lot of time to run businesses and nurture your relationship with your spouse and then nurture your relationship with 7 kids, because it doesn't get easier and it doesn't get any cheaper. Once they get older, those expenses are bigger and their problems are bigger, and they need their father and their mother more.
So I think you're going to have and I would love to talk about that deeper on another subject, another time. My question here, the last one, is advice for risk-taking in life. Because typically how I end the show is, what is one thing that people can do? But I'll expand the question because I think you'll have a unique and very good answer, better than most, about what is one action somebody should take today that's listening to this that would improve their lives or give them some form of perspective or value that would significantly improve who they are or who they're going to become.
Don't be a pussy, and realize that you learn more in your mistakes than you do in your successes. When you screw something up, you're going to learn 10 times as much as you do when you're successful. You got to have those successes. You got to learn to take, it's like I told Cabrian on when I was coming back from Arizona, she'd went on something that she felt was a complete failure. But then as I pointed out everything that she learned on that so she could learn what not to do again, she realized that was actually her most productive trip she's ever been on, because she just wasn't paying attention to the failures. You got to have the failures, and don't be afraid to fail. Those are just natural. You need them. You're not born with instantaneous knowledge. You got to have the failures, because then it'll teach you what to do and what to do different.
Well,
don't be afraid to fail.
Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for that insight as well. We're going to drop links down to your businesses and media contacts and everything like that. So appreciate you being our 45th guest.
All right, man. You guys take care. Hopefully, okay, sounds good.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode of Titans Up today. What did you learn from it? Make sure to drop a comment below with your most valuable insight so that other people can engage in the conversation around what this speaker brought to the table. And then on another front, make sure to subscribe so that every time we drop a new episode, you will be notified. And that way you can keep fueling your dreams and your brain with fresh insights, which can help you along your journey and along your path to your goals. So thank you so much again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next interview.